channel welded up.
Oh, no, it's a special tool.
Come on now.
Got a price, I'm sure.
It's a special tool, $139.95.
But it's all flat. There's no.
You think it is?
You could go home and make one, aren't you? Yeah.
He's gonna have the other guy make one.
Go ahead and measure that piece of steel. But the shim on here translates to the gap that you want, plus the stock blower back, plus the rubber mat. You'll be really close to it. When you take that off, bolt your back on, you'll be really close to it. Take off and run. Okay?
Is that the same match?
Mad Jag's a little different. You need a thicker shim on there. You guys know about Mad Jag, right? What Mad Jag is? This is a Mad Jag back that replaces this back. Mad Jag is, I'm going to say, on this side of the mountain is indestructible.
Put that in my pickup, the red one.
This, a regular blower back, the panel and the mat will run you about 180 bucks. This Mad Jag kit for a 492 style accelerator will run you just a little over 830. Life expectancy of those, talking to the custom guys. Bart, have you ever replaced a back in your blower yet? Not yet? I bet you're due. It's gonna be pretty close. Taven, we put one in yours. So these last 2 seasons, maybe at the most. I put a used Mad Jag back in a custom guy's machine 6 years ago. A used one. It's still there. So it does pencil. But it sounds like a lot of money to pay for a piece of steel. The biggest disadvantage I see is when you go to work with that back plate, pulling it off to do stuff in there, that baby's heavy. And then you got the weight of that too. So it has its good points and its bad points. Any questions on paddles, accelerators, blower backs?
Where shoot? The next one up?
The next one up, sure.
Yeah, that could be a bitch to get those out.
To get them out, if you take all the bolts out and the triangle hole in the back here,
Okay.
get in there and pound down on the back liner and it will come out. But you got to remember to pop it. There's the 2 bolts up here that hold the door when you put the cover on. You got to pry it out over those and you should be able to pound it down. But be ready because once it takes off, it's going. Front one will come out.
Yeah.
Pound it down. Probably the biggest pain of doing those liners, or this liner right here. This one doesn't even have a hole in it yet. They'll wear out right here. This is, to me, the worst piece there is to replace.
Yeah.
The whole machine. Because this is the worst one. Thanks to Ed Cloister, I found out with his 493, his hybrid machine, the cab sits about that much higher. You can actually get your hand back in here and get on them bolts. So, 492 guys, you can go in the back of the cab and take 2 bolts loose, put a jack in there and jack the back of the cab. Your stopping factor is your air conditioner line at the elbow. You can go about that far. Put your hand back in there. Make sure you got it blocked though. Somebody accidentally bumps the porta power or something, that thing starts coming down your hands in there. It's not cool. But if you raise it up, you can actually get to these. Some people have gone and made nut bars for the back of here. If you get the new tower liners, you have, I think it's this bolt, this bolt, this bolt. It's only got, right? Who was it just, somebody just called about that. They don't have all the holes. You don't need them. Those liners aren't going to go up, I'll tell you that much. A trick when you're putting liners in, the first one that goes in, the bottom corners they're tipped in a little bit like this. Take them, stick them in a vise, the bottom about that much, and just bend them out, maybe 3/8 of an inch. Right at the bottom, so when you shove the next one in, it doesn't get inside of it. You want to bend them just a little bit. Did I say bend them in? You got to bend them out. And then they'll stack perfectly on top of each other, right? They just close that gap as nice as can be. When you're putting those in, the first one you can get in. You get in there with a wire brush and scrub it out, spray some foo-foo in there. Take the first one, shove it in. You can pry it up into place just above this lip. You go to put the next one in, you're making a wedge up in there. Get it up as far as you can up in there. And then you know, like the tall bottle jacks they use on cherry pickers, engine cranes, those ones that extend about that far, that on top of a block, and you just jack that thing right up in there. Works well. Good question, Alan. Anything else on that? Okay. Everybody knows what this is? Dale does. Okay. You know what it is? It's a spout worm gear. Okay. It's pretty much the same on all of them. It's hidden down below those white covers. You don't see it. You don't pay any attention to it until you start hearing thunk, thunk, thunk when you hit the spout button. So you go back and you look at it. You got, well, measure the spring. The spring's is way too long, so you're gonna tighten the spring up. Which way do I turn the bolt on the bottom of here? Tighten that spring. Anybody know? I want to shorten that. I want to tighten that spring up. So which way do I turn it? Do I turn it in?
Turn it the other way.
You turn it out. You back up. All that is an extended jam nut, and it keeps the spring from moving around. You tighten that up to your dimension that's given in your owner's manual. You shouldn't have much trouble. So okay, we set our spring, and it was way off. It was loose as a goose. You go back in there and you hit the button, and it still goes thunk, thunk. The problem is most likely right here. There's a ball bearing right on this worm gear. Once that bearing goes out, it just lets everything start flopping. There's a brass bushing in here. It's greased off your auto luber, or it has a grease fitting on it. You don't have auto lube. Way up in there. There's a line here. It comes out, makes a hook, and it lubes the gear. And most machines, not all of them, have a grease fitting right here to do these bushings that are inside of here, so that the thing can break away and doesn't lock up. But we didn't grease that bearing. It's a sealed bearing. So when that thing goes out, what happens, everybody knows where this is now, what I'm talking about. Okay, you got the motor back here. This bearing's out. There's enough space in this bushing. This shaft's flopping around. It's beating up this edge of this hole. You got plenty of movement there. You're going, well, so what do we do? So, well, let's tear it apart. Now we take the spring out of the way. On the front of here, we got two stake nuts. So you take the stake nuts loose. You gotta remember, you can't see this thing because it's all covered up, and you're reaching up right below the spout where all that corn juice has been dripping down. Okay, we got that loose. Got them nuts off there. Take a hammer.
Break the ear off.
Start wailing on this. And pretty soon, whoa, what do you know? That piece comes off. Oh, we're good to go. So you get your hammer and you start pounding on here. It moves back about, not far, and it stops. Then you pound it back, go back and forth 3 or 4 times. Now, you finally get mad, you stick your head back in there through all that junk and the hoses and all that stuff. You go, hey, wait a minute. There's keyway in there. This keyway is now, because you've been pounding on it, it's stabbed into this bushing a ways. And it's made the bushing a bugger to get out of the shaft tough to move. So finally you get that apart, got that thing off there, thing falls down, get your fingers pinched. Pull the shaft out, it's got the race is stuck to it. There's a tin shield on the back of here. It's stuck in that race, so you've pounded it out. So you got the race on here and this tin shield, and you're just shaking your head. You realize what's happened is when this thing was trashing around, it's mashed all this surface on here. You can't get the snap ring loose, and that bearing race is still in there. And that darn guy is saying, get this machine running. So you start with a die grinder, you grind all that out, take that out. I guess what I'm saying about that is check this bearing. If it's getting loose at all, replace it before it goes out. It's just a bear. Mark, did you guys have one of those bearings ago? 2 of them?
I've done it a couple times.
You've done it?
A couple times.
880s, for some reason, seem to eat those things. And I don't know why it is, because I don't, not really any different. When you got it apart, check these bushings that are inside this pipe. Check the bushing in the end of the nose cone here. This one's, I'd run it. Put her back together, and there is a snap ring that's supposed to be inside this end, but I don't put it back in. I do when I'm running the machine, but for today I'm not. Because if you don't, what's it going to try to do? It's going to try to walk right out of there. You always have to end up with a few pieces. Come back later and
I
sell
see an
them.
extra ring on the outside too.
What's that?
An extra ring on the outside.
Out here? Yeah. This happens to be that this is a bushing material that we use for driving shafts on feed rolls. It just happens to be the right size. Okay, got this thing going back together. Actually just found this out the other day. Put this thing together. How you set these, how tight to put these nuts. Like I said, I like numbers. I know how tight things go. They don't give you a number. They give you a real exact measurement on this. It's kind of tough to work with. They say draw it up finger tight, set your spring, walk up on the hood and grab the end of the spout and wiggle it. If you get a sound that sounds like, and your spout moves, you're too loose. If a little bit of movement, because you're going to get a little bit of movement in this, but if you hear that thudding sound, in which, well, Bart, you've heard that when it's the gear jumping out and things moving around. All this stuff, I've cleaned it up really good so it slips together. I would run this unit just the way it is. I wouldn't be afraid of running them with just a little bit loose like that. It's not going to cause a big issue. These things, these are bugger to get off. Even with this being a split collar, they're a bugger. If you ever have time and you're really bored, you don't know what to do, you know, your wife wants you to go shopping or something, go out to the shop and take this motor off, take these off, clean it all up, put lots of never sees on it and put it back together. Because it might save you when that bearing goes out. These things are the worst thing on it. And clean those shafts up, clean the motor shafts up. What happens is you get this thing all together and you're really excited, and of course the grass is drying and everybody's going crazy. So you put something in here to keep this thing from driving all the way on there. You grab that motor and you shove it in there and it won't quite slide in. What's the first thing you reach for? BFH, exactly. Start pounding on that. Don't pound on the back of the motor because you can't pound on this bolt. There's a little flange that bolts onto it from the tin flange. And you'll pound until that punch goes into the flange or you break the gear off. So a little bit of time cleaning these up will save you a lot of headaches.
I have mine taped because I know from
Experience, yeah.
the whole collar's taped up. There's not that notch is filled with grease and the whole thing's taped up. Everything.
Anything you can do to make that thing come apart better, then hopefully you don't have that problem anymore.
It's all tuned up. It has a brand new neck spout adapter.
Yep.
When I looked inside and looked up, the grass was eating away that collar.
At the very top of the pipe?
Yep.
Yep.
You couldn't see it anywhere else but from down below.
Yeah. We don't see that too much here because we don't do a lot of side blowing. Side blowing seems to do that more than,
Yeah.
I don't know why. Any questions on this thing? Every year I try to throw you guys something different. Somebody wrote last year they wanted to know more about accelerators. Ta-da! When those questionnaires that we send, when you guys go back, sit down, they're going to ask you, what'd you do, what'd you think, blah, blah, blah. Please write suggestions. What do you want to see next year? You want to see electronics, whatever you want to see, write it down. Because believe it or not, we actually do look at those. We are required to look at them. So that's where this came from. Anything else that you want to see, write it down. And then put a big star by Mark's name, I need all the points I can get.
Well, Mark, how many adjustments can you get out of blower paddles? I mean, how many
Adjustments?
times? Yeah, how many movements have you been able to?
Good question. I never move my rotors.
Yeah.
Never, ever, ever move my rotors. If it starts blowing crappy, if the paddles are looking crummy, replace them. If the back's looking thin, replace it.
So you have a bad one there?
Think they got the mileage out of that one? That is actually, that might be a light duty.
Oh yeah, I'd say so.
That's supposed to be one of these. Anybody have any idea what happened to that paddle? I didn't grind that off. That's the way I took it out of an accelerator.
Is that when I ran that head in the dirt?
No, it is the one you did. That is buildup inside the accelerator can. Those grooves that are inside on that back plate that you can see on that back plate. If you get enough, Eastern Washington guys are guilty of this one, build up inside of here, you can suck more horsepower running those paddles against the front of this here than what it takes to blow the feet. If you're having that buildup inside those cans, anybody know how to get it out of there the easy way?
Water.
Pressure washer. Run water in through. All these machines have an inoculant nozzle on one side. You can double yours on your new one. We did on your old one.
I don't think it's.
So if you have resin buildup, we're going to call it resin for lack of a better term. Most of it comes out the back end of a valve. You see it's built up and caked in there with mud, and it's hard. That paddle is actually, it's still shiny. That's how that thing was.
Actually,
Somebody actually asked me if I ground that like that. Yeah, it's
I
worn
should have
thin.
brought mine in because it's half again worn down.
Yeah.
Here, in fact, my carbide held up, but I scooped out everything
Behind it.
to
That's
the-
just
about the
plain wore
thickness
out.
of a penny.
That's just plain wore out. But to get rid of that stuff in here, if you run just a little bit of water from your inoculant system, and we've done it in the past, I guess we don't have anybody running that anymore. We split it, and we ran a nozzle to both sides, put a little bit of moisture in it, and it will take that stuff out of there. If you guys that are running liquid inoculant will notice that you don't have the buildup in the can on the side where the water's coming in.
Kind of
Little
leaves
bit
it
of water.
lubricated so it won't stick to it.
Yep. And it doesn't take very much. The biggest problem we had when we were splitting those, we didn't end up with enough pressure to, the filters would choke all the time. But it worked. And if that is an issue, if you're not running an inoculant through it, you know, like when you guys are running the powder, if you have blowing issues and it's caking up, fire that inoculant up, blast it through there. Well, water at that point, because technically that's what that is. That's a water tank. No more questions? Okay. Couple things that have come up off the questionnaire. Last year's, somebody wrote on there, how do I manually run my hydraulics? There is a way on Boss machines to say you have an electrical oops. You got to raise the head up to get down the road. You can go down under there, find the appropriate spool that is header up, put a small punch in that hole, and push it, and you can raise the head. I'm not going to say it's just going to push with your finger, but you don't pound it. I mean, you could probably hit it with a screwdriver like this. All you got to do is just pop it just a little bit. As long as you hold that header can try to go up. Let go of it, and it sets right back. Okay? This is going to be on high pressure hydraulics only. This is on the low pressure side. This will be your belt tensioners, your clutching gauge, like that. There's a screw on the top of it. And you just screw that down. And when it hits the bottom, it hits the bottom. Don't keep turning it. There's a little plastic seat down in the bottom of there that's probably worth $1.50. Valve's done. You gotta buy a new one. So don't overdo that. Just, and half the time, we'll say that this one's cutter head engaged. By the time you get, that's all the way back. By the time you get to about right there, it's starting to turn. You don't have to go all the way. This is going to hold true on 492s, 494s are a little bit weird because they use high pressure hydraulics to do it, but it's reduced. It still has these. Don't ever tell me that you were running with this screw turned in on your main drive clutch and you hit something. I couldn't shut it off. I am not responsible. This is a test only, because there's no way to shut that cutter head off. Short shutting in. So you get back there and unscrew that. We've all dynamited that cutter head handle more than once. Chopping along and something bad happens, and you, boom, and it stops. You can put that button down all day long and it can stop. So just don't do it. This will tell you two things. It will tell you that you have hydraulic pressure at the appropriate place. The clutch works. If it isn't working, you have to let it work.
Mark, how many people keep the little diodes? Because all the little square little connections that are there behind the square block, the gaskets, and I have a stack of diodes.
The old style collects. The old style
the new ones
connectors.
have that, but
you don't even have
basically they fill up with water and they
They
short
fill
out.
up with water and they won't short out. But the connector he's talking about, there's a name for those. What do they call those things?
Like that.
Yeah, screw in the middle.
The
Yeah.
one with the 4 pins and the screw in the center.
Yeah,
Little
There's a-
black ones?
Yeah, there's a name for those. Anyway, there's a diode on almost all those, so it doesn't come back. These, I don't know if it says it. The ones with the blue dots have the diode in it. Yeah, it says it right there. They're dioded. Let's see.
On my gear shifter,
Yep.
I push the button,
Yep.
it blows the fuse down on my panel.
Yep.
Put a new one of those.
Yep.
Is the diode bad in there, or do I need to trace the short?
No. Most likely, it's a corrosion between here and here. No? It's new.
I put a new one in.
Okay? The diode is going to be in this. Come in here, connect. Do you have?
I have the connection you just said for the pins and screw.
Oh, take it apart and look at it. Yeah, it's going to be. And to take that apart, then screw the end of it and pull the shield back. You let's split the shield. Slide it back and then take and push the connector through. And diodes, for lack of a better term, is a electronic check valve. Make sure you put it in the right direction. Note which way the stripe is on the end. And yeah, I would go to that. Or you could just take it and not put it on anything and push the button to see if you have a short in the ground. If it's unplugged, it should have nothing. A couple issues that we've run into this year. Oh, we'll go back to this stuff in a minute. Everybody knows that you can repair grease lines, the rubber grease lines. There's kits for doing that. This happens to be a slightly demoed one. You've got to cut the hose off, screw this on, left hand thread, take the other piece, screw it in, it's right hand thread, go right down the center of the line, you connect. Bottom this out on the hose, bottom this out on that, voila. Plug up grease lines. Not that you can make so much more pressure with the grease gun, but you can start checking things. It's just a fitting that I made. Unplug your grease line from your blocks, the ones you think is plugged up. Put this on here, unhook it from the block on the other end to see if it's in the hose or the block. Put this on, pump it, or if you want to fill like a bearing, if you forget to fill that bearing or something, you stick this on and fill it. Just a handy little tool to have. You find a lot of places where you pump grease the other direction. Okay.
Comment.
Yes.
Grease gun and filling of the reservoir.
Yeah.
My grease gun, flipping stash, packaged up, airtight, and set in a perfect spot. So nobody can touch that grease gun and drag it anywhere else or borrow it. There's one speck of sand or anything. Get up into that grease brain and plug it up into the shoes. You can only run for so many hours if that greaser don't work. So that grease gun, because you drag it, move it over here, move it over there, grease this bearing here. That grease gun that I run now is only just for the greaser and nothing else. I don't let it touch nothing. because one time I got plugged up. Figured out each time I'd wipe the end off, I'd end up getting plugged up again. I mean, that grease gun has got grease and scum on both ends. You're trying to wipe it down and keep it clean. Now that I keep it in a bag, it's spotless. That spot, keep on running.
Okay. We'll skip this. I always bitch about people using impact guns and putting their needles back on, suck it down, and then keep it going. That's what happens when you run an impact gun. Suck it, and the feed goes on the bottom of the clamp. 492s, 489 up. Twist that shaft just as nice as can be. Yeah. Ran into an issue a couple times. Code comes up. Going to the gun, you sharpen. You flip the switch to do the bar. Code is 121, 123, somewhere in there. Various descriptions of it are no pulses from the right motor, no pulses from the left motor. The one that throws people is no pulses from left end. Either way, it's still shear bar adjustable. Every time you turn that switch on, it sends just a little of electricity into this motor, makes it turn a little bit. Back into these motors, back under this cap. This little circuit board. This little circuit board is straddling over a magnet stuck on the end of the shaft. That thing is counting the pulses of this thing. Now we all know that shaft out there turns so fast. The reduction on this is 1,800 to 1. So it's noticing. It doesn't take much. You give it a little shot of juice, it moves it quite a ways. It knows it's not seeing those pulses. That's how it tracks where the bar is. It's how it knows. Chances are what's happened is we've gotten a little bit of water inside the board, and it goes kaput. It's $130 for a kit with a new magnet, a new board, and a new giant piece of heat. If you want to save time, you can just change the whole motor for $1,300. It's possible. These aren't bad to change. Cut this back about yay far. You can feel where the cap starts. Take a razor knife, just cut that. Take the cap off. Put the plug in. Set it off the side. Let's see if 2 screws going through this board sitting like this inside of here. The thing not to do is lose these little bushings. In their infinite wisdom, they couldn't have made one long bushing. They made it so you put 2 on each screw. And you never are working on these things in a field or in the dirt or anywhere else, and you'll drop one. Mark has a stash for those things.
How come the new heat shrink doesn't have the stickers on it?
There's no serial number. Well, actually, when I get done, you almost still have a serial number. Because I only use that much of the heat shrink. Yeah, just enough to seal around the cap. It's usually the pressure washer that bites you. You know, we're always preaching wash, wash, wash. One of my new customers who I've always said, if you keep this thing clean, it'll be worth just as, it'll be great. You'll love it. He took it to heart and he washed this thing. It was so clean that it was in the shop a couple months ago. And Dwayne came down and, when did I get that machine? Sorry, boss, it's not yours. What? Whose is it? I told him. He goes, oh, okay, makes sense. So now I feel bad that I told him to wash it so good because he really did. It cost him. A way to tell if it's caused by it's not getting electricity down to it is to take it and put the machine in shear bar park mode. Back the shear bar out and tap on the shear bar. If the motors run backwards, 9 times out of 10 it's going to be that circuit board. If they don't run, you're dealing with your tire problem. It's going to be circuitry, it's going to be wires, connections. They always tell us, don't blame it on the modules. Well, it could be a module, but we haven't replaced a lot of modules lately.
Well, I do have another scenario. It could be that somebody ran into it with a forklift.
Oh, and the shaft doesn't turn at all.
Is that right?
Yeah, that will do it. That's happened?
Yeah. Wasn't me.
Had a machine that had problems like this, and we're trying to troubleshoot it, and we can't get it into the engage mode. It won't go. So we're thinking we got something really bad going on. We start checking stuff. I was like, you know what?